Good, welcome. Thank you. Glad you're here tonight. To do this, we have to go back in time. If you want to appreciate the significance, Mary, of protein and strength training, you have to go back to the early 1800s and read the physiology textbooks of that time and see what did scientists know and believe in 1820. If we do that, we quickly realize that people thought that, scientists believed that energy for working muscles, John, came from the explosive breakdown of proteins. Think about that for a second. Energy for your working muscles comes from the explosive breakdown of proteins. That's what we believed in the early 1800s. Fast forward to the 21st century, we know that is 100% wrong. So tonight is about taking an evidence-based approach to protein recommendations for adults who are strength training, which, as far as I can tell, it's everyone in this room. So we're all strength training, we all want to get the best benefits, and we're going to talk about that tonight. But really, you have to ask the question, why bother? I mean, isn't this something, Pat, that only muscleheads and athletes should be concerned about? Big muscles, being strong, etc. In the United States, muscle loss is a major contributor to chronic disease and premature death. In fact, it is the number 2 reason why people are forced out of their home. Number 1 is Alzheimer's. People have Alzheimer's, they can't function, they have to be institutionalized. The number 2 reason is because you have sarcopenia. It's the age-related loss of muscle. People are just too weak to function safely, and we all know people like this. We're too weak to function safely on their own. So you have to say, okay, Bill, you're done. We're going to the institution. You're going to pay $70,000 a year to go live over here now, away from your friends, away from your family, etc. So this is a major economic burden. It's a major cause of physical pain and emotional pain in the United States. So our data comes from 2 major sources. You say, well, okay, great. Where are these references? Who says that we should do this? And we're going to talk about it in 2 seconds. Our sources of data come from 2 major sources, which number 1 is the Sports Nutrition Handbook for Sports Dietitians, published by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. This is the world's largest group of nutrition scientists and practicing nutrition professionals. They just published an updated edition last year, 142 references on their chapter on protein recommendations. Most of that data, Hannah, is original research and peer-reviewed journals. So we have a large body of evidence from the Academy of Nutrition and Diet saying this is what we should do. We're going to share those 2 do's with you in 2 seconds. And then we have the largest systematic review in the history of the world on adults lifting weights and measuring protein needs. That was published just last month in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. 11 world-renowned scientists got together. Olivia, it took them 1.5 years to do this. They published it. We're going to look at what that data tells us as well. So we're taking a scientific, evidence-based approach. We're not going back to the early 1800s where we feel like energy comes from explosive breakdown of protein molecules. So that's our format. And tonight, we're going to answer the big questions. How much protein should Jeff eat? You might be surprised to find out what that number is. When should you eat it? This is a question that was never asked. When I was a kid, growing up reading the Musclehead magazines, it was always about consume 7,000 grams a day, you'll get big and muscular. Well, we now know that timing makes a difference. So we have to consider, how am I spreading my protein out over the course of the day? So we'll look at when should I consume protein and what kinds. Not all proteins are equal. We'll talk about differences between plant proteins and animal proteins and really what gets you the best bang for your buck from a return on your strength workout. All right? So let's begin with number 1 here. Welcome. 0.7 grams. You guys are going to get this in a handout. So if you want to take notes, great. If you don't want to take notes, that's okay. And you'll be able to access this video because it's being recorded. So if you want us to send it to you, we can do that. 0.7 grams per pound of ideal body weight is what we're recommending. 0.7 grams, take your weight times 0.7. That will give you the protein grams to consume on a daily basis to achieve optimal increases in lean body mass, optimal increases in muscle tissue if you're strength training as an adult. Now we're going to qualify that, Butch, and say ideal body weight. So some of you might say, I'm at my ideal body weight. Just take your actual body weight, multiply it times. How's that weight?
That's what you asked for something.
So yeah, the difference between actual versus ideal. Some of you might say, well, I feel like I'd be a little healthier if I weighed 15 or 20 pounds less. You sort of know your healthy weight for yourself. There's prediction equations, Marianne, to figure out what is ideal body weight, but we're not going to walk through that tonight. If you want to know what that is, I can tell you, but just take whatever your current weight is, Pat, and or your ideal body weight. And some of you might just say, well, ideal, I need to lose 15 pounds. Great, take that weight. What we don't want to do is base protein needs on extra body fat. We're not trying to hang on to extra body fat. So if you're trying to lose body fat, I don't want to say, hey, you've got an extra 20 pounds of body fat. Let me feed you extra protein to support that. We don't want to do that. We want to preserve muscle, bone, skin, organs, etc. So take 0.7 times actual or ideal body weight, and you can basically guess what your ideal body weight is. All right, you with me so far? So we don't want to automatically take actual body weight all the time. Now when we do that, we bring this number down because the RDA, the recommended dietary allowance, is 0.36 grams. So I'm telling you, Butch, to double it to optimize the building of muscle. Seems like a high number. Actually, it is a high number. But the RDA is not factoring in ideal body weight, Marianne. So they're just saying take your weight times 0.36. So when we make that adjustment, we're actually pulling this number down some. But if I take 193 or so times 0.7, I'm at about 135 grams a day. So that's my number. That's what I say. If I can get to that number, based on all this research, almost 200 references, I can optimize the building of muscle and strength in a strength training program. You with me so far? So 0.7 times actual or ideal body weight. Now, beyond that, we always used to say, well, just eat as much as you want, whenever you want. That was always the attitude. You know, anyone who's lifted weights, anyone who knows athletics or athletes knows that they'll sit down and they'll eat 60,000 calories and they'll have 400 grams of protein. So there is this point of diminishing returns when it comes to protein consumption. There's a point where you no longer benefit from consuming more protein. More isn't better. We thought that was the case for years. So there is this point of diminishing returns, and we call this the anabolic threshold. And so that means that if Jeff is having dinner and he has a steak, a large steak, maybe he's having dinner out, he's treating himself to a nice big steak, and it's not uncommon to have a 8-10 ounce steak or so if you're indulging, and he's getting 7 grams per ounce. He's getting a truckload of protein from that. Not all of that is going to be used. A lot of that protein is going to be burned off and wasted. And so this whole issue of what is the ceiling in terms of me benefiting is what we call identifying the anabolic threshold. And so what is that number? This is also take your weight times 0.25, take your weight divided by 2.2 times 0.25. That will get you the per meal amount that we can say reliably will be used for building muscle in the meal. So let's say if I do that for myself, as I have done that for myself, I come up with about almost 30 grams of protein. If I take 193 divided by 2.2 to get what I weigh in kilos, multiplied by 0.25, my per meal feeding should be about 25 to 30 grams. Beyond that, it doesn't mean that nothing happens, it just means those proteins aren't going into muscle protein synthesis. What we're trying to drive is MPS, muscle protein synthesis. Your muscles, guys, are just like your bones. Remember the bone talk, John? I don't know if you read our bone talk. You're always building bone and you're always losing bone every day. Break up, break down. We call that burn turnover. Same thing is true of muscle. You're constantly building muscle build and you're constantly tearing it down. This leads to what we call net protein balance. At the end of the day, I want to at least be in equilibrium, in balance, or positive. What I don't want to have is losing more than I'm putting in terms of synthesis. So I don't want to be losing muscle, but that's of course happening with a lot of folks. So we're trying to get to the point where what I eat gets used to support muscle protein synthesis, it's not being wasted. So again, weight divided by 2.2, that gives you your weight in kilograms times 0.25. Apply that same ideal body weight concept. So if you feel like you are healthier, a few pounds less, use that lower weight. We don't need to use actual if you feel like you're trying to lose body fat. Do you understand what I'm saying in terms of actual versus ideal body weight? So 0.25 grams, but one of the issues that happens for all the young men and women in this room is that as we age, we become anabolically resistant. All this means is that our bodies are less efficient at using protein the older we get. One of the great benefits of aging. If we give a 13-year-old 10 grams of protein, they soak it up like a sponge and their body hangs on to it like there's no tomorrow. If I do that with a 60-year-old, not so much. We're less efficient at absorbing protein, we're less efficient at hanging on to it, and we don't synthesize protein the same way at 60 as we did at 13. So we have this thing called anabolic resistance as we age. And so again, all this means is that these numbers are minimums. There's evidence to say you should be as high as 0.4 grams per kilogram for that meal threshold, not 0.25. But the large body of evidence that is this would suggest at least 0.25. So for all of us in this room, I'd say strive to get to that threshold on a per meal basis. Now, if I take my number, so 130 grams or so, but if I say, okay, 130, I can't eat it all at once, so I've got to break this up. I'm only going to really use about 30 grams for muscle protein per meal. So if I want to optimize the benefit of my protein, I want to spread it out over the day. So for me, 4 to 5 meals a day will get me close to that, or 3 meals and some snacks in there will get me close to that total that I'm trying to get to. So you're taking your total, dividing it up based on how much your body can use at one time. Does that make sense with me so far? So it gets a little bit tricky because we can't just say, Greg, here's a gargantuan piece of meat, eat it, and expect it all to go into his muscle. It just doesn't work that way. It actually gets oxidized, which just means it gets burned off. And it's just wasted, essentially. So it doesn't get protein integrated into skeletal muscle the way we'd like it to. So we know it's about 0.25 grams per kilogram, maybe just a hair higher as we're aging. And we want to take the total, Joanne, and spread it out as best as we can. All right, so again, you might say, well, gee, now I have to walk a tightrope. I can't exceed 30 grams here, and I got to get 30 grams there. Again, you want to get in the ballpark here. Don't get too bogged down with the exact numbers here. We want to generally be in the ballpark. And I'll say something before I wrap up about just moving in the right direction. One of the great things about our attitude here at Med Fitness is that we don't want you to walk a nutritional tightrope for the rest of your life. That's pain and suffering in and of itself. So we want it to be doable. We want it to be simple. But this is giving you an idea that once I figure out what the ideal amount is, try to space it out a little bit. And believe me, nutritionists have been saying this for 30 years. We said it 30 years ago. We just didn't know why we were saying it. So, okay? So with me, so 0.7 body weight or ideal body weight times 0.7. Body weight in kilograms times 0.25 or maybe just a whisker higher. Take that total, spread it out throughout the day. I mean, minimally, what I would say, if I'm talking to someone, I'd say at least spread it out into 3 doses. The less you spread it out, the more you waste. That's a good way to look at it. If you said, well, I only eat twice a day, I'll just do 50 now, 50 later. It's okay, you're just wasting a lot. You're not getting the anabolic stimulus you could get, and your muscle protein synthesis isn't going up. The moment I give Anna Marie protein, we can measure this very reliably today. We see muscle protein go up, muscle protein synthesis. So you start making muscle tissue immediately. It takes about 45 minutes to do this. If I give you that nutrition bar, whatever it is, we can see it in 45 minutes in your skeletal muscle driving protein synthesis. So if you're not spreading it out, Pat, you're just losing out on an opportunity to keep more muscle mass as we age. Okay? And would everyone agree that in a society where tens of thousands of people turn 60 every day, we have to be more cognizant of what we're eating. We can't just sort of go with the cultural flow. You know what the cultural flow is in America? Of course, we know that fasting is popular these days, so that doesn't lead to muscle building. Let me just fast and eat any and everything I want at the end of the day. That's a prescription for bad outcomes, whether you look at the science or not. So we need to be a little more attentive throughout the day to what's happening if we really optimize both bone and muscle health. Okay? All right, so spreading it out as much as you can. And in my case, as an example, I do 5 5 meals a day. So more is better here. 3 larger meals and some snacks mixed in there, and maybe a little bit beyond that sometimes. So, but we're spreading it out. We're not just throwing it at you all at once. Now, what kind matters here? What do you guys know about types of protein? What have you heard about what's good protein, what's not so good protein? What do you know about protein? Does anyone have any ideas about what we should be consuming in terms of type of protein? A lot of smiles. Pardon me?
Soy, whey.
Soy, whey, okay. Soy is a plant-based protein.
Yeah.
Whey is an animal protein, okay. From a big picture standpoint, we can classify protein into 2 big boxes. Plant-based protein, protein that plants make, right? And then animal-based protein. And what we're going to generally suggest is that you're consuming, for those of you, are there any vegans in the room here? Nope. Okay. Vegetarian but not vegan? Okay, so a little bit of some animal products but not completely vegan. So what we're going to generally suggest, literature would support the fact that if you can, if you're not a vegan, get the majority of your protein from high quality sources. And so what is a high quality source? Animal proteins are higher quality than plant proteins. Now, what about soy? We hear that soy is a good protein, right? We hear that. What about quinoa? We find that that's a high quality grain that has higher biological value than other grains and so on. So when we consume proteins that resemble our skeletal muscle is when we get the best integration and best absorption, best utilization. So our skeletal muscle just happens to resemble the proteins that we're consuming when we consume animal proteins. The amino acid profile is very simple, very similar. Digestibility is really high. And so that's why we find that if I give Pat 30 grams of animal protein, he gets a bigger increase in muscle protein synthesis than if I give him 30 grams of soy. It doesn't mean he gets no effect from soy, but he gets a significantly greater increase from animal protein. Now we're not going to debate, whether you should be a vegan or not tonight. That's a whole nother issue, but just from a biological standpoint, just to understand what's happening here, your body will absorb and hang on to and use animal protein to a greater degree than it will plant protein. Now, can you be healthy as a vegetarian? Of course you can. Of course you can. So we're not suggesting that, well, it's the end of the road if you're not eating meat. That's not the case at all. We're not saying that. So specifically, we're looking for the amino acid leucine. For those of you who know anything about protein, leucine is what we call a branch chain amino acid. And it's involved in what we call the leucine trigger hypothesis. It is the one amino acid. If I give Steve leucine, if I just give him about 2.5 grams of leucine, I really jack up muscle protein synthesis. So it is the one single amino acid that we see linked to this high rate of muscle protein synthesis. It was interesting. Why don't we just go out and buy leucine supplements and take that all day long? You could do it. Do we suggest it? We don't. But leucine is one of the 11 essential amino acids, and we call it a branch chain amino acid. It just has to do with the configuration of the protein itself. But it is the one that has consistently been shown to push protein synthesis up more than any other amino acid. Now, where do we find leucine? Well, we get it from animal proteins. It's prevalent in milk products, chicken, other meat sources. So we find it in animal foods. We do not find leucine in significant amounts in plant-based proteins. It's there, but it's there in small quantities. All right. So if I had to say in general, if you're not a vegan, try to get at least 2/3 to 3/4 of that protein intake through these high-quality sources to better drive protein synthesis and to get higher amounts of the specific amino acid called leucine. All right. Now, I said 2.5 grams. If we look at the research, that seems to be the dose. If we're giving it supplementally to Steve, or even if he's getting it through his food, that seems to be the ideal dose to optimize muscle protein synthesis. So for Steve doesn't like taking supplements, so he says, hey, Richard, well, can my diet do this? Of course, the answer is yes. If you're consuming whole proteins, let's say you're getting some chicken at a meal, 30 or 40 grams, whatever your number is per meal, and or some milk-based product, whether it's cheese or anything else like that, you're going to get enough leucine. You're going to get at least 2.5 plus. So you don't have to go out of your way to get this amino acid, but if we were going to give you a supplement, if we were going to spend any money on a protein supplement, we'd want to make sure that per serving it had at least 2.5 grams of this specific amino acid called a branched chain amino acid. All right? Everyone with me so far? So this brings up that question then, well what about supplements? You know, I'm trying to manage my weight and I'm cognizant of calories, and so should I be taking a supplement or should I just always stick with whole foods here? Well, in that review that I mentioned, published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine just last month, 49 studies, 11 world-renowned scientists, 1,800 adults between the ages of 39 and 64, those who use supplements are more likely to get to that 0.62 grams per kilogram. I'm throwing different numbers at you now. In other words, those people who use supplements are more likely to get to that 0.7. They're much more likely to get to 0.7. Why? Because for me, Jeff, 130 grams is a lot of eating. I'm already busy, and on top of it, I'm trying to be cognizant of my body weight. I just had my physical today. I saw my doctor. Thank goodness everything checked out okay. But you know, you get on the scale, you want to know, what's my weight? What's my blood pressure? Where's my blood sugar at? And so it was good news today, but I'm cognizant of my weight. As a 55-year-old aging in America, it's easy to gain weight. So Steve might say, hey, I'm watching my food, my diet. Getting to that optimal number is really hard to do. So in that case, it could be smart to be judicious with a dietary supplement of protein to help you get the nutrients without a ton of calories. So yes, proteins, supplements can be tools. Again, we're always recommending a whole food diet no matter what you're doing, but for the most part, if you're falling short, Libby, then that's when it would make sense to be smart about a supplement to get you closer to that 0.7 grams per pound. Okay. Make sense? Yeah.
Question, so if you want to stay more with whole foods then, would it make more sense to use like the protein shake as a snack and not as a meal replacement?
You absolutely could, Anna-Marie, you absolutely could. You could use it as a snack. It's a added source of high quality protein at a strategic time.
Okay.
So, you know, most people will tell us, Pat, they like to eat their food instead of drinking it. So that, of course, that makes sense for most people. So if you say, hey, I'm eating my meals, I like to eat my meals, but when I'm snacking, I don't snack or I'm not doing much. So that's where a protein supplement might be a good fit based on your eating style. So yeah, so you want to be strategic and you want to try to put it at a time when you're not usually getting protein. How many of you are not, in your best guess, you're not big protein eaters in the morning? Is anyone here not a big protein eater at all? Okay, a couple of you, some of you, yeah. So you might say that the morning is an opportunity for something like that if I don't feel like eating a lot. Anyone, unlike myself, not a late night eater? Is anyone not a late night eater here? One person? No. Okay, couple. So, so we have, you are a late eater. Okay, welcome. You're in the right spot, Butch. So, so you really want to customize this to your eating pattern and your style and your preferences. So there's no universal sort of one rule fits all here, Anna-Marie. So, okay, so use a supplement. Research tells us, and I know health professionals have criticized this for years, but we now have actual good evidence to say adults up to seventh decade of life, 65 or so, when they use supplements, they tend to do better in terms of protein needs. So just something to bear in mind as you're looking at your overall eating habits, okay?
Do eggs contain, is that considered animal-based?
Yeah, it is animal-based. Yeah, they do contain leucine, yes. Yes, yes.
Quantity, so that would be
Yeah.
a good thing to use.
Eggs are a high quality protein, correct, yes, high quality protein. Yep, indeed, they are. Okay, so we've talked about how much, we've talked about when, spreading it out. Who is that new for? How many of you have not been told, spread it out as much as you can. So Jeff, that's new. A couple of you, that's new. I mean, sometimes intuitively it makes sense that we kind of spread our food out, and there can be other benefits, but right, this is the first time we've ever addressed this from a protein standpoint, is to spread it out over the day. And we're saying that high quality most of the time, it doesn't have to be 100% Libby, but as much as you're able to reasonably do, high quality is better at driving muscle protein synthesis than the lower quality plant-based proteins. They will do it to some degree, but they're just not as ideal as the animal proteins. Okay?
Rich,
Yeah.
you always say after I work out, we should eat protein within a half hour after.
That's a great point, yeah.
And how much protein are you talking?
Right, so now we're reframing that, Libby. Thank you for bringing that up, yeah. So those of you who are at MedFitness, you know, we've suggested that post-workout, get at least 10 grams, maybe more, of protein to enhance the training response when you work out, right? You've heard that from us. Almost 20 studies have evaluated this. It's very much a mixed bag, but recent data is showing that increased sensitivity to protein that strength training generates lasts for up to 24 hours. So think about this. Jeff does a workout. When was your last workout, Jeff? Yesterday. So here, a day later, if I go in and give him protein, his body is much more efficient at using it and absorbing it because of the strength workout yesterday. 24 hours later. This speaks to the physiology of strength training. It's powerful. So what we're saying here, Libby, is we're sort of blending in this, we call it the anabolic window. It's longer than what that initial 10 or 12 study suggested. So the good news is you don't have to do it right after you eat, after you strength train. You know, some people are out in the car drinking their protein drink, and you don't have to do that if you don't want to. I know Marianne does that, so, but,
I just grabbed a bar from
but, yeah, right.
That's okay, we're cousins.
Yes. So you don't have to do that right after the workout, but the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, they're suggesting that sensitivity does go down. It's still there, Jeff, a day later, which is powerful, but it does diminish over time. So they're suggesting within several hours following a strength workout, try to get some high quality protein. The other side is that think about spacing things out. Remember, if you know you've got to space them out, if you come to work out and you haven't had anything to eat for an hour and you do your strength workout and you get out of here and you get on the road and you get home, it's probably been 3 hours before, during, after. So it would make sense Jeff might want to get something post-workout because time has elapsed and now it's time for another dose of protein to jack up muscle protein synthesis. So it just doesn't need to be immediate, but probably not too long after the workout. It still makes sense due to that timing issue. So, but we have a little wiggle room, right?
What about before?
You know what? Some of those studies, Pat, have looked at before feeding. They've gotten similar outcomes. Some people do really well before. What we tend to suggest, well, you've got studies that have looked at before, during, and after. They all produce benefits. Some of them don't produce benefits. And so we're not sure why, but we do know that people tolerate protein more after a workout than they do before. So just as a sort of a reasonable expectation for people to say, hey, come in. We're going to push you hard, Marianne. You're going to do better in your workout if you generally has less food in your gut. So just for simple purposes, unless you know you can tolerate it, would usually go after, right? The other thing, how many of you are here to just kind of better manage your weight too, right? It's one of the reasons why we exercise as we age. So we also know that post-exercise feedings tends to displace other foods. So if you do a workout, a hard, intense strength workout, and you're sort of an hour or two later and thinking, well, I'm kind of hungry now, it's time to eat. If you get some protein in, it tends to push out some of the low-calorie foods that are so common in our culture. I mean, you could be driving down Randall Road and get 60 billion calories in a heartbeat. So it makes sense from just a general displacement standpoint and, you know, filling up and doing it at a time that's well tolerated. But if you can handle protein before the workout, Pat, okay, it's not better necessarily, but it's okay. It can get the same effect of raising muscle protein synthesis. So, okay.
It also seems that when you have protein right when you're done working out, like in a very short time frame,
Yeah.
when you're done working out, you just feel better.
Yeah, we've heard that from a ton of people.
You just
I know.
feel better, you feel full, and
I know.
it helps. I think it helps your body recover from the workout.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're getting some carbohydrate from that, you're restoring some lost glycogen. There's other physiological benefits to post-exercise nutrition, right? So you might just say, okay, keep it simple, just have something after my strength workout. Yeah, absolutely. So, Nancy?
How does the protein really like affect your cholesterol level again?
Yeah,
protein,
yeah.
level,
The protein in and of itself has zero effect on cholesterol. It's the food that it's in that makes a difference. So if I give you, let's say 4 ounces of beef, and beef is going to have about 25 milligrams of cholesterol per ounce. So that's 75 milligrams of cholesterol contributing to serum cholesterol. That has an effect on serum cholesterol, but the protein itself is neutral. It does not change protein cholesterol synthesis at all. So if you're worried about that, don't worry too much about it. Just look at the totality of your diet, but I can certainly talk to you more about that too. So yeah.
I just always eat small amounts of meat,
Yeah.
can't take,
Yeah. Well, you're doing great. I mean, your weight is spectacular. So now here's the sort of the final straw, and then I'll give you a take-home message to apply. What about this dietary supplement called creatine? Who's heard about creatine? Anyone know about creatine? Yeah, it is the most studied ergogenic aid in the history of mankind. And so creatine is a protein that we can take supplementally. We normally find it in our skeletal muscle already. We find it in milk and red meat abundantly. And it's been studied from a performance standpoint. So we know that if we give someone creatine, their ability to engage in repeated bouts of high-intensity activity like sprinting improves. And we see this at the collegiate level, at the professional level, at the Olympic level. So the question is, should I take creatine because it's been associated with increases in lean mass, muscle tissue, and it's helping me to generate more power, so I seem to have more strength when I'm taking creatine. We have some evidence on seniors taking creatine saying, oh, more lean mass with seniors. Should I do that, and does that make a difference? Well, my flat answer is no, don't worry about it, but you could editorialize this. What we don't know about creatine for the average adult, let's say Pat. Pat is not going to, as far as I know, he's not training for the 2020 Olympics, right? As far as I know? Okay. So Pat's living his life. He wants to be happy. He enjoys his family, all these great things. He wants energy to enjoy life and golf, etc. What's more life enhancing? The benefits of the strength workout with adequate nutrition or taking creatine? Of course, it's the benefits of the strength workout, adequate nutrition. He may never even think about creatine. He's going to get a truckload of benefits if he strength trains and he has adequate nutrition. So my sort of opinion on this is that if you just look at adults that are strength training, we have a hard time cataloging all the benefits. There are so many things in life that get better when you strength training. Mental, physical, psychosocial, it's unbelievable. Economically, you do better when you strength train. You live longer. In fact, one of the scientists that I know from this conference we go to, his soundbite is, it's hard to kill strong people. That's how he summarized 3 longitudinal studies showing if you strength train, you live longer. The fountain of youth is right here in front of us. You strength train, you live longer. You're less likely to die from any cause, and I know Steve knows this. All-cause mortality drops like a rock when you lift weights. So Pat's doing that. Don't worry about creatine. Your life is going to be better beyond belief because you're already doing the right thing. So my general opinion on creatine, don't worry about it. We have all these great things happening. We don't need to try to split hairs and guess and worry about side effects and take it at the right time and all these other things. But if you want more information, I'm happy to talk to you about that. So overall, we're saying double the RDA. It's a big jump, 0.36 per pound to 0.7. It is a big jump. We're saying space it out, Hannah. Don't do a truckload all at once. Space it out. And we're saying the type matters. Try to get the majority high quality. You can certainly have plant proteins, and there's huge benefits to consuming plants. So we want you to eat a plant-based diet. Yes?
With all the protein, the powder protein on the market, and every retailer box having one,
Yeah.
what's your take on the different ingredients to look for? I mean, you have Whole Life where it's plant-based and organic, and you have the Tone It Up girls have a protein. Like, what is the difference and things to maybe keep an eye out from if you're looking for a protein powder to mix in like your greens and
Yeah.
spinach and like
Yeah.
standard protein shake in the morning?
Good question, yeah. Here's a good way to level the field. Evaluate it based on protein. Don't think about what else is in it,
Okay.
because that's not why you take a protein supplement. You don't take a protein supplement because you want vitamin B12, is it? No. You don't take it because you want chlorophyll, right? You don't take it because you're trying to get more fiber, right? You take it to get protein. So evaluate it on a protein level. So when we look at protein, if you're taking a plant-based protein, and there's a truckload of them out there, of course, so nothing wrong with that. I've got a plant-based protein supplement that I take. So look for one that has at least 2.5 grams of leucine in it, and they supplement it with this. And so now biologically, we've corrected that amino acid score. The digestibility is higher, the muscle protein synthesis is higher. So if you're taking a vegan or plant-based one, guys, and I know they're super popular, look for one that has at least 2.5 grams of leucine as a way of adjusting for that specific anabolic amino acid in your protein. Otherwise, if you're getting animal ones, you're in good shape generally.
Right.
Egg, milk, any other animal source is high quality. Yeah.
So it doesn't
yeah.
matter like
So
from
it's
each
just more
brand
personal
to
preference.
yeah, and each brand of protein, it doesn't matter. It's all protein. At the end of the
Exactly
day,
right.
It's all protein.
That's exactly right. That's
Doesn't
like
matter what labels
water
are.
is water.
Okay.
Dihydrogen oxide, no matter what you do to it, that's what it is. Protein is protein. You can dress it up, you can make it fancy, evaluate it on a protein level. Yeah.
Okay.
So of course, you guys know marketing can get a little out of hand these days. So yeah, so it's
Yeah.
easy to get a little twisted with your protein supplements. So, okay. All right. So, yes.
Speaking on what you just said, brought up about the brands, certain brands of protein have more cholesterol in them than others. So with the higher quality, so comparing one to the other, when would you go with protein like a whey protein that has less cholesterol or more cholesterol?
You know what? Typically those animal-based ones, if it is animal-based, the cholesterol is not hugely different. There is variation, of course. I wouldn't worry too much about the cholesterol from a protein supplement. Remember, guys, cholesterol levels in your body are more linked to cholesterol synthesis, not consumption of dietary cholesterol. We learned that probably 20 years ago, but we don't always talk about it. So I could give you 500 milligrams of cholesterol today. It's not going to affect your serum cholesterol much. If I give you other types of fatty acids, I can drive cholesterol synthesis way up. So from a dietary cholesterol standpoint, for those of you cognizant of cholesterol, you don't have to be too preoccupied with how many milligrams of cholesterol you're getting overall if you're eating a generally healthful diet. So if that helps you out, or so here's the take-home message. I've just told you got to really crank up your protein, and you're wondering, how in the world am I going to do this? Level the playing field by thinking about this as you go home. Don't confuse what I just told you about optimal. 0.7 grams per pound of actual or ideal body weight is optimal. That simply is the point, Hannah, where protein synthesis leveled out. If we look at people who were getting 0.5 and we went up, John, to 0.6, they built more muscle. And if we went up to 0.7, they built more muscle. But if we went to 7.3, it was the same. There was no more anabolic potential to giving more protein. So I'm not saying you can't eat it if you like protein foods. Go ahead and eat it. It'll be burned off. But that was the sort of point of diminished returns. So you can move in the right direction, Jeff. If you go home and kind of look at your diet tonight and say, hey, I'm at 0.5. The average American is between 0.4 and 0.5 grams already. So I'm saying move towards 0.7. But if all you did, Marianne, was go up by 20 grams a day and you notched it up by a few points and you're closer to 0.7, you're better. You're better. This does not have to be an all or nothing campaign. And remember, we want to build and preserve muscle tissue as we age. There isn't a point, Steve, when you look at those studies that show people live longer, there isn't a point that says, hey, those people who did this strength workout and this diet were living X years longer. We just looked at people that strength trained overall and got stronger and had enough nutrition to gain strength. So it's very general. So all you want to do tonight is say, hey, where am I, roughly? is there an opportunity to do better? So I like to say, where do you have room to move? Maybe it is a post-workout protein snack of something within the 1 or 2 hours after your workout. Maybe it is breakfast. Maybe you're not getting hardly any protein at breakfast. Maybe you could throw in a protein snack in the evening instead of eating ding-dongs or whatever it might be that you're having. So you want to just look at your diet and say, where do the easy wins for protein exist? I guarantee we all have opportunities for easy wins, because I have easy win opportunities. I know you guys do too. So do that, move towards 0.7, you'll be better off. If you can get to 0.7, great, but even if you just move closer, Jeff, you're better off. So it's about, don't confuse optimal with practical. Think in practical terms, because being practical still translates into health benefits for you. At the end of the day, that's what we want. You don't want to walk out here saying, well, there's no way in the world I'm getting to 0.7, just forget about it. Where's the ding-dongs at? You want to think practically and sort of apply that to your eating patterns as you're sort of cultivating, we'd call it successful food routines. What are your food routines? You want to cultivate things that work for you and your eating style and how you do things. Okay? Yes?
Question.
Yeah?
Say I'm only getting 0.5, which I
Sure.
probably am.
Yeah.
If I did get 0.7,
Yeah.
like I should be,
Yeah.
will I feel any different? Will I have more energy? Will I know I'm getting it?
Yeah.
Just
That's a good. Everyone hear that? If she goes up to 0.7 from 0.5 or thereabouts, will she feel different? What's going to happen is that your strength workout, you'll get a greater increase in muscle protein synthesis. So your strength should be a little higher, Libby, and the amount of muscle on your body will increase, so your metabolic rate will increase. Energy should be higher, and what we're looking at for you is really preserving quality of life, right? Wouldn't it be nice if in 20 years from now you had the exact same function as you have today? That'd be great. It'll be great to see it when it happens. So when you go up in that amount, it's about staying stronger longer and not going down that death march of losing muscle every single year. But will drive protein synthesis, Libby, is what we're going to do. So a little more muscle on the body, a little more strength, less loss of strength as you're aging. So, yeah.
Well, I just know, I mean, you keep talking about 60-year-olds. Well, I'm way past
Are you past that? Okay.
And I find I don't have the energy level
Yeah.
I did at 60.
Okay.
So if I was bringing up
Yes.
at 0.7, would I
Yes.
have that energy level?
It will, without a doubt, it'll help, because remember, with muscle comes muscular endurance. We sometimes forget this. We always think about how strong you are. How much can you do in this exercise? But with strength comes muscular endurance. Your ability to do things longer and to endure through any task goes up, the stronger you are. They're completely connected. VO2 max goes up with muscle mass. So if you guys want to have more energy, your first priority, John, is say, hang on to the muscle I have, and or how do I build more? So it absolutely should, Libby, without a doubt. Yeah, so endurance is linked to muscular strength. They're connected completely. So we don't always think about that when we think about strength training.
How do you know how much protein is in something? I mean, if it's in a package, it will tell you that. But I mean, raw
Yeah.
stuff or...
We have a handout tonight, Joanne, that Joanne will give you the handout, so that'll get you started. If you have questions after you've looked at that handout, let me know, but that'll at least get you started to give you some ballpark values. Yeah, if you don't have a label to look at, yeah, that'll get you started. So it's a good question, how much protein is in food. So beer is very high in protein, so yeah.
Perfect match.
Yeah, right. So I'll be here, of course. So Joanne is going to give away some prizes here for those of you who sacrificed your Wednesday night to come out and hear about this stuff. We do appreciate you coming out. If you want to talk to me, I'm here, or I'll see you down the road here at Med Fitness. But thank you for your time. Some quick prizes to hand out for you. Thanks for being here, guys.